hello, and thank you for joining us today for this deep dive. My name is John, and I'm sitting across the table from Pastor Shawn. He's the lead pastor here at Family Worship Center in Lakeland, Florida. Our goal for this conversation is to hopefully start more conversations in your small groups, your day-to-day relationships, and your everyday life about how to become a better disciple of Jesus. And so we'll be taking some points from Pastor Shawn's Sunday message. We'll be expounding on them in this conversation. So you've been on a series about spiritual gifts. And again, if you're listening today, go back and listen to these messages. If you haven't been with us on Sundays, there's so much more than what we're discussing just in this podcast. But you talked about how in 1 Corinthians 12, Paul encourages us to desire the higher gifts. And so we see a similar statement in chapter 14 as well. I have always read these verses as that I should personally desire those gifts. But you kind of cast it in a new light that we should desire to see all the gifts at work within the body, not necessarily just for ourselves personally. And so my question is, and this is kind of what I was thinking about when you said that, is should I keep desiring more gifts than the ones that I already have? Or are these scriptures only implying that we should desire to see these gifts manifested among us, not necessarily just in ourselves?
Yeah, so I maybe let me answer this two ways. One, I think that when we are aware of the gift that we have, our greater desire is to use our gift. So I think our prayers and our desires should be focused in ways to use our gift. In desiring the gifts as he's telling us to, the reason why I like to see that in the context of desiring that all the gifts operate, because before he told us to desire the gifts, he said two things. One, that the gifts are as the Spirit of God wills. So there's that piece. But then he also went and he goes on to say, are all going to be apostles, are all going to be prophets, are all going to work miracles, are all going to have gifts of healing. Rhetorical, but the implied answer is no, they're not going to.
Right.
So I don't think he's going to tell us not everyone is going to function in these, but desire them. Like for yourself to function in something he's already said you may not have, because these are according to the will of the Spirit of God.
Right.
So first answer is I do think the greater message is desire that the gifts operate in the body. So desire to see them. I think it forces in a good way an interdependence.
Yeah.
Submitting one to another. We see that in Ephesians. I think there's always that necessity of our need for each other and embracing that. Desiring the gifts plays into that. If we're desiring for ourselves to have more gifts, that makes us more independent, and that doesn't seem to be a gospel theme. So I do think the greater message there is that we desire the gifts to manifest while realizing that makes us dependent on everyone else's gift. And if we're desiring for their gift to manifest, that doesn't absolve us of our gift. So if I'm focused because I understand my gift, I'm desiring for a place for my gift to operate, but I'm also desiring the same for everyone else.
Right.
So yeah, if you had to say it's binary, it's this or that, I absolutely believe it's more that we're desiring all of the gifts to function, which includes everyone else.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And, I think that hopefully it comes from a place of wanting to help people.
Yeah.
That would be the reasoning for desiring to see more gifts at work in your life. I know for me, it's like, there's definitely, if I'm being honest, there's times where I'm like, Lord, I would really love to be able to lay hands on someone and then be healed.
Sure.
Should that event occur, should that opportunity, occur. But I also don't know how often I've been praying, Lord, I pray that you would bring more people with the gift of healing into our circle, into our congregation.
Yep.
And so that is a great point that the more focused we are on us having more gifts, the less interdependent we are of the rest of the body.
Sure.
So it makes sense. But I just wasn't sure, is it a wrong thing to pray and ask God for, to see more gifts manifest in your life?
Yeah. No, what is the motivator?
Right.
And that's where we really always have to check our heart.
Right.
If somebody's in front of me and they need God to just be miraculous, and there's nobody around, who is left but me? Mm-hmm. And I think that very honest, Lord, send me, Lord, gift me for this moment so that your child in front of me can receive healing.
Yeah.
That's a different motivator. And again, the point isn't you to be gifted. The point is for the saints to receive ministry, or people Jesus loves to receive ministry. So when that's my motivator, I do think we will operate at times in multiple gifts that we wouldn't necessarily say that we have. For sure.
And you kind of talked about that story. You were out hiking with your family.
Right.
You know, there was a young man that had an asthma attack. There was, the church wasn't on the mountain with you.
Right.
And so it was kind of a moment of, you just felt led to pray for him, and there was an immediate, reaction, even though that's something that you don't function in, long term or all the time, in that moment there was that specific.
Yeah, because you see the need.
Yeah.
You recognize and you have a desire for the gifts of the Spirit to operate.
Right.
So you were the only one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe the better prayer would be, Lord, whether it's in me or whether it's in somebody that is in, in my vicinity, that's in a part of the body, whatever it is, Lord, we just want to see your Spirit move.
100%.
So, and that makes sense. That's good. Cool. So kind of on the same note of, all of the different gifts working together. You told this story yesterday about how you kind of joked that you figured out that you might not have an evangelistic gift.
Yes.
Now, when I heard that story, it sounds terrible, but I felt better about myself because I actually had turned to my wife. I said, man, I was like, no, I don't feel so bad. I don't think I'm very evangelistic either.
Right.
Because there's definitely been times in my life where, in different workplace environments or wherever I'm hanging out with friends, I look back and I'm like, oh man, you know what? I really did not talk about Jesus a lot. So I guess, and maybe this is an obvious question, but as Christians, if we feel like we don't have that evangelistic gifting, should we feel less bad about not sharing our faith with those around us, or should we even feel excused from that in a way? Or is that not a good way to put it?
Yeah.
Because I know for myself and for others that might be listening, I don't want to remove the responsibility of us, being an example to those around us or sharing our faith with those around us just because we might not have that gift of evangelism.
Yeah. So, again, long-winded answer, which is probably why these don't show up as much in sermons, because it's a 10-minute rabbit trail, right? I think every single one of the gifts, to a degree or to a measure, we have to be careful that we're not saying, I don't have to do this. Like the gift of faith. Well, we all have to have faith.
Right.
Without faith, it's impossible to please God, right? Or generosity. We're all called to give. Or exhortation. We're all called to encourage one another. Mm-hmm. So, yes, every one of us have been given the ministry of reconciliation or that evangelistic message. But there are people who it's just kind of a one-on-one with a friend. They're talking about their faith. They're sharing what God has done. We overcome by that testimony, right? And that testimony is evangelistic.
Right.
So I may not be an evangelist, but in like Timothy's case, and I use that, he was told to do the work of an evangelist in his pastoral ministry. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think it's a way I don't think we can use it as a cop-out to say, okay, I'm not gifted, so I don't have to share my faith. We all have to share our faith. But somebody who is an evangelist, they have the personality to walk into a room full of strangers and just, share their faith.
Right.
And there are people that I've been around. I don't care if it's the waitress at the table, if it's the guy or gal in the drive-through window, if they're just walking the lake and pass somebody, they just talk about Jesus all the time, his saving grace. That is just their message, the goodness of God. It's infectious. And then sometimes we walk away and it inspires us where we have influence in those individual conversations, but then we might feel a little guilty because, well, I don't do that in these big scenarios like they do. And that's what I'm saying. You're not going to, because that's not where you're gifted.
That makes sense.
But everybody has responsibility in how these gifts, how they function at a very baseline manner. And we'll get into that in the weeks to come. But, there is we introduced it week 1, where the Spirit of God comes upon you for something, and then we also minister, though, from the Spirit of God within us.
Right.
And so all of us are evangelistic from the Spirit of God within us, but not all of us would have a gift upon us as an evangelist.
And that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I even think about how I feel like I have the gift of encouragement.
Yeah.
And so I see that come out more in my interactions with strangers.
Absolutely.
Encouraging them about
Yep.
their day or what they're doing. Maybe it's not as evangelistic in that setting, whereas, of course, I can share my faith with a friend or family
Yeah.
or someone one-on-one. But it's almost like the emphasis. It's like, where's the emphasis of your gifting or when that comes out? Like, I even think about my job, that, in a leadership role, I'm not administrative. But I can't, like, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I need you to make a list of, for these things, I can't say, sorry, that is not my gifting.
Right.
You have to talk to somebody. I'm still gonna have to be administrative in some ways.
Sure.
There's just not an emphasis. Now, if you pull me and then you put me in, secretary position or where that's all I was having to do is be administrative, then I would crash and burn.
Sure.
Because the emphasis is being placed on something that's not my gifting. So whereas someone absolutely is called to share their faith with their friend, because that's just a part of being a believer.
Yeah.
We might not take that person, put them on a platform and say, okay, now share the gospel to a million people, as an evangelist.
Right.
So that makes sense. And I even think of like all the funny excuses, it's, I don't think a lot of people are going around saying, yeah, I have the gift of generosity, man. So it's not, it's not something that, anyway.
No, I get it. Absolutely. Yes.
So who wants that imparted, the gift of generosity? We're going to start imparting that.
Absolutely.
Lastly, I want to discuss the gift that you coined yesterday as the gift that is dying among us.
Yeah.
I thought that sounds like a great book title. The gift that is dying among us. And
you write it. I'll write the foreword.
No, I'll leave it up to you. I will absolutely review it on Amazon.
Right.
So you talked about how every single one of us is called to help.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's actually helping others that our gifts are developed.
Yeah.
Shared some great examples from 1 Kings, Numbers, 1 Samuel, story of David, I think Elisha, and then Joshua with Moses.
Yeah.
So I think that I was personally convicted when you talked about this, because we're always looking for ways to be helped.
Yeah.
Whether that's even through a product or whether that's through the people around us, we always want to make our jobs easier, just in life. But it's not common, at least it doesn't come natural to me, to look for ways to help others. So why do you think that is? Probably some obvious answers, but maybe expound a little bit more. And how can we better position ourselves to help others in our own spheres of life, not just in the church, but also just wherever we are?
Yeah. So, for me, I think being in my 40s, I think it's easier to look and see the lack of help. I think this could possibly be through generational eyes, so I fully admit that potential. I think that when the generation that was before me, when they were bringing us up, so whether it was a teacher, a professor, a coach, a parent, when you participated in things, you did a lot of the work. So servant leadership was not a conversation. It just didn't exist. People that were on the team, they were there to serve. Kids in the house were there to serve. There wasn't a lot of discussion about the leader serving. So servant leadership was not, it really wasn't in the conversation at all. So there are some bad things to that. People demand to be served. But the good thing to that is the generation who now, like I said, we're in our 40s, we had to set up our baseball fields before we had practice. We had to clean everything up when practice was over. It was rec league. Well, now you get into things like travel ball, and not in every scenario, but in a lot of scenarios, parents are paying a lot more to have kids involved in things. So coaches are setting everything up. They're preparing everything for the players when they get there. And then the players get done. Parents don't want to sit around and wait for their kids to clean everything up. They're ready to get home, get to dinner. And so now coaches clean everything back up. It fits in the servant leadership model because the coach almost serves to get everything ready, to give him a right to coach when the players are on the field, and then he continues to serve so that they can leave.
Yeah.
In the process, we build a generation of young adults who don't know how to serve. I don't actually think people don't want to help. I don't think they've ever been shown it's necessary because they didn't help at a very young age. We have more services being done at our homes than were done 30 years ago. And a lot of it, parents want to be able to they're working harder, they're working more than they've ever worked. They don't want to take every spare moment to be cleaning out gutters and mowing the yard, and they want to take time with their kids. So instead of Saturday being yard day, Saturday is let's go to the beach or let's go to the lake day. And again, it's just another example of something that's very helps oriented that's been taken off the table. So I don't think any of it's intentional, and I think a lot of it, what I feel like is sort of anemic, came from a good place, if that's possible. I think leaders serving is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think parents wanting to spend more quality time with their kids doing something fun is a good thing. But along the way, helps sort of got lost. Even in the way kids and students are taught, they're the center of the conversation. It's teachers bending curriculum and environment to the needs of that student. That student's not really having to clean the whiteboard after school or whatever, because now it's a smart board. They just turn it off, turn it on. Yeah, so I think it's very practical how it's died. I think bringing it back is where we have to get really creative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You explained that perfectly, and I think I just had this moment because servant leadership was like the theme of my college experience.
Absolutely.
And studying leadership.
Yeah.
And I feel like the healthy way of doing things is always somewhere in between the extreme of the past and the extreme of the present.
Yeah.
Because it's
That's
like
good.
this pendulum that swings. So, we're talking about helping right now, but really with anything, almost like in life and the church, it's like whatever the extreme was like 20 years ago, it's like we've swung the other direction.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been moments, I think, where I have absolutely overdone it in servant leadership. Not that you can ever be, too much of a servant leader, but
too much of a perfectionist, too much of a servant. Yeah, right.
But completely neglecting to allow others to help.
Yeah.
I feel like, as a leader, whether it's in this position or in past positions, I can see where I did not give the opportunity for people to help because, I felt like I had to overprove myself and just do everything.
Yeah.
And so, that makes so much sense. And then how we can lose it in ourselves to just expect, oh, well, I'm not the leader in this scenario, so they're going to do everything. I'm excused. Like I'm off the hook. This is nice. So it is almost like somewhere in the middle. It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
Again, an example of, fearing, past mistakes. So we've talked about in previous conversations, letting the fear of this one extreme drive us to, not fully live in the gospel.
Yeah.
So I can because I think that I had that fear of not wanting to come off as, overbearing or not wanting to come off as needy or demanding.
Yeah.
But in that fear, are we actually closing people off to fulfilling their purpose and
Sure.
fulfilling their gifts and being able to help, which everybody is called to?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any more
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think awareness is a big deal. Like
Awareness,
once
yeah.
we're aware of it, I think we as leaders, as people who are participating in a process, we just can look to make opportunities for people to help,
Yeah.
but then also opportunities for us
Yeah.
to help. And, when you look around, I think the truth is, John, the majority of people are probably not serving in their gift. And a nice pipeline to do that is helping somebody that you feel like has a giftedness that you share. So you're interested in the success of their gift. And when you help them in theirs, it just makes a nice pathway for one, you to nurture yours, but also it gives an opportunity for a platform, not in a bad way, but
Right.
a platform for you to use your gift.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously you go into it not expecting anything.
Sure.
Because I think that's the purest form of help you can give is
Yeah.
I'm going to help you simply because that's what I want to do. I want to help.
Because it's needed. Yeah.
If something comes of it, which clearly in Scripture we see that has the potential, something has the potential to turn into something greater, to
Yeah.
turn into opportunity. But even if it doesn't turn into opportunity, it doesn't void out the fact that you're just doing what God's called you to
Right.
do to help.
Right.
And obviously we see that our rewards aren't always on this side of heaven. Sometimes there's a greater reward in heaven that we might not ever see. And I think also that probably is part of our reasons for not wanting to help, because in our society it's all about what can I get right now for myself, this instant reward, this instant gratification. And if I see that somebody needs help but I don't see a quick result for something that I receive from it,
Right.
then maybe I'm less likely to help out with that. Whereas there's a clear pathway here to my well-being, to my success, to my me being celebrated, then I'm just going to help in that area.
Yeah.
So the other areas that are less rewarding, so to speak, suffer. Because they're not as maybe not as up front. They're not as visually rewarding.
Sure.
I don't know. That was a weird way to put it, but
it's good because it's true. We have a really keen eye for opportunity.
Yeah.
And opportunity usually means that there's a reward at the end of this. And helping isn't always that. So, again, I don't think people don't want to help. We just don't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder if you, as a pastor who is, you're in front of people a lot. Your gifts are in front of people a lot, and your, people are probably complimenting you a lot, as they should, for your teaching abilities and just what you do. Do you find yourself having to look for opportunities to help where there is no instant reward, if that makes sense? There is no, no one sees it, and is there a benefit to that for you in kind of balancing out? Does that question make sense?
No, it does. Yeah. So, again, I think back to how I was raised and how I was educated. So when I was at SEU in 07, 08, Dr. Mark Rutland was there. Servant leadership was a huge icon in it was an axiom on campus. And so I think I was taught to do that, and I recognize it very well because being raised by baby boomers, they still had the expectation that subordinates helped and served. So my point is, stepping into leadership, it was easy to just, rather than serving or helping my leaders, I look to serve and help the people who are called to follow or called to share in the process. And so I think it's easy to have equality. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but my wife and I were talking about this the other day. like at home, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, probably your dad had a big lazy boy Barco lounger, whatever you want to call it. Like that chair was set aside, and at our house it's just the couch, and so Dad just has a spot on the couch. We had a rectangle table where we ate dinner. Dad was always at the head of the table. We have a round table. So there are these little things that just kind of take away that opportunity to just, quote, be served,
Right.
which then constantly puts you in a position where you are wanting to serve. And so I think if I would be arrogantly humble, I think it's become natural to look for ways to serve people.
Yeah.
Whether it's time off, flex time, seating, parking, all the above. If it's worth doing for somebody, it's worth doing for all of us.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, hopefully this conversation today helps give some more insight on how we can be better disciples of Jesus. And again, if you want to listen to Sunday's messages or get more connected to the ministry here at Family Worship Center, you can visit our website, fwclakeland.org, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, FWC Lakeland, or follow us on any social media. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.